The galaxy flourished under the careful harmony among innumerable civilizations, helping to create a complex tapestry of technologies, beliefs, and cultures. Whispers circulated of a mysterious and rarely seen race, solely referred to as humans. They were considered untouchable by universal law, out of fear. Not reverenced. Tales, rather than myths, depicted them as unparalleled masters of conflict. Wartime ingenuity that defied logic? A natural order rarely understood by the galaxy. The law was clear, nobody questioned it. The official records showed chilling detail, adaptive, persistent, and unsettlingly imaginative in the theater of battle. Tactics varied from ruthlessly basic to disturbingly complex. Whole chapters of galactic history documented humanity's brief, yet terrifying, encounters with the cosmos. Alien generals spoke in hushed tones of the Terran story. A conflict where a small human fleet faced a vastly superior enemy. And still, they prevailed. Through baited weaknesses, recycled civilian tech, and maneuvers no AI could predict, the humans won, bloodied and bruised. Their victory wasn't just a battle. It was survival. Made manifest, tragedies that would have broken most species, pandemics, nuclear wars, self-inflicted disasters, only forged humanity stronger. They didn't just survive adversity. They designed it. Galactic law forbade contact with humans. Not as a suggestion, but a hard, cold, evidence-based decision. The Galactic Accord made it clear. No trade, no alliance, no treaties, no contact. Yet. Not everyone agreed. Especially the young. Especially the curious. One such being, a scholar, began to wonder, was humanity truly the threat they claimed? Or had millennia of separation created a myth out of fear? The scholar, from a species known for its neutrality, began a quiet obsession, decrypting old transmissions. Reading human history, they found not monsters, but paradoxes. Artists and tacticians, poets and warriors, makers of beauty. And devastation. What intrigued the scholar most wasn't humanity's weaponry. It was their mind. Where other species relied on logic, humans used intuition. Where others calculated, humans improvised. Their danger was in their unpredictability. And yet their music, their stories, their paintings moved something primal. How could such destroyers grieve so deeply? Why honor the fallen, even their enemies? Why mourn. If they were heartless? The law had forbidden understanding, and the archives told only one side. The enemy's side, but the truth? It demanded more. So, the scholar took a risk. A secret expedition, to observe, to understand, to witness. From afar they watched, and what they saw was not a war machine. It was a society. People with families, dreams, rituals. They weren't locked in conflict. They were living humans adapted. They built. They solved problems not just with tools, but with imagination. They competed fiercely. Not just in battle, but in ideas. From sports that mimicked war to debates that flexed their minds, they didn't just want to win. They wanted to outthink. Even in casual conversation, there was philosophy about war, about peace, about restraint. Veterans told stories not with pride, but with pain. They spoke of necessary wars, and the ones that shouldn't have happened. Their strength wasn't just in weapons, it was in endurance. Nuclear war hadn't ended them. It taught them. They grew wiser, stronger, more dangerous, not because of brutality, but because they learned. The scholar documented it all, and with each note, their understanding grew. The galaxy feared humanity's military, but their resilience was the real weapon, because you can't predict someone who learns from failure. You can't control someone who sees weakness as potential. Humanity was feared not because they attacked, but because they endured. The scholar, preparing to return, knew the truth would shake the foundations of galactic law. Because yes, humanity was dangerous, but not in the way they believed. They were creators. They were survivors. They were storytellers. To know humanity was to understand that peace and war lived side by side in their souls. And it was that duality, not their weapons, that made them terrifying and incredible, but the galaxy was watching. Unauthorized contact had been detected. Authorities scrambled, alarms echoed across sectors. In humanity, they had just begun to learn. They were being watched. In keeping with their reputation, the alien observer, instead of reacting in panic, calculated. Humanity's long-standing isolation was born not from exile, but from fear, whether intentional or the result of centuries of whispered tales past. Down like myth across the stars, the galaxy had learned to tread carefully around them. A fear humanity recognized, but chose not to exploit. Their strategy was deliberate. The circumstances were strategic. And so, when the scholar arrived, humanity neither welcomed nor attacked. They watched, observed, measured. What they showed was something few had seen. Restraint. Outsiders believed humans were impulsive, but they weren't. They were methodical, not just reactive. They assessed, calculated, planned. The scholar, an alien of deep curiosity, had come to understand humans through myth and archived war records. But what they now saw challenged every assumption. An uninvited visitor rather than triggering. Defense became a subject of controlled curiosity. Human leadership gathered, debated the risks and rewards of contact, and engaged with a precision that suggested deep understanding of galactic politics and their precarious place within it. The scholar expected hostility. What they witnessed was caution, empathy, and calculation. Even as galactic authorities gathered in emergency councils to determine how to respond to this contact, humans remained composed. They didn't retaliate, they didn't panic. They watched. The stars listened to transmissions and waited. This, more than anything, terrified the Galactic Council. It was not humanity's firepower or military prowess that unnerved them. It was their self-restraint, their control, their ability to wait. The scholar, now caught in the fallout of their decision to breach galactic law, struggled to reconcile myth with reality. Humans were not mindless warriors. They were fully aware of their reputation and used it as both sword and shield. Their true strength was not their technology, not their weapons. It was their strategic perception, a depth of understanding that extended far beyond war. As events unfolded, the scholar saw humanity's diplomatic acumen firsthand. They extended offers of dialogue rather than dominance. They sought information, not power. And through it all, the scholar found themselves not just an observer, but a participant in a galactic chess match. Some galactic factions demanded immediate containment. Others called for cautious observation. But none could ignore what had happened. Humanity had breached its isolation, not through aggression, but through maturity, and yet humanity's silence said more than words ever could. Their lack of panic was a message. We knew this would happen. We are ready. Back in the Galactic Council, the scholar's report sent tremors through the chambers. The myth of humanity, the terrifying warlords of legend, was shattered, not because it was false, but because it was incomplete. Humans were indeed capable of devastating violence. But they were also artists, thinkers, philosophers, and poets. They told stories that bent time, sang songs that stirred the soul, and built machines that walked the edge between beauty and ruin. They were paradoxes. Creators of peace and instruments of chaos. Survivors of nuclear wars and caretakers of fragile hope. They were not driven by hatred, but by necessity. They did not relish conflict, but they did not flee from it either. When peace failed, they became war. Veterans spoke of battle not with pride, but with sorrow. They did not romanticize war, they endured it. And when it ended, they built again. Rebuilding was their defiance, and always they asked why a war started, why it should end. Why enemies should be treated with dignity. Why victory without honor meant nothing. The scholar included these accounts in their report. Descriptions of humanity's moral calculations, the ways they tied ethics to strategy, conscience to survival. This, too, terrified the galaxy because humanity's ethics were not fixed. They changed, evolved, adapted, depending on the situation. The human conscience could be a source of salvation, or a weapon. The scholar returned to the Galactic Council with a document unlike any other. It was not a glorification of humanity. It was a diagnosis, a profile of a species shaped by hardship, sharpened by tragedy, and softened only by their own stories. The galaxy was forced to reconsider its laws. Communication with humanity was still forbidden. But now it was a prohibition not of fear, but of necessity. Because contact would not just endanger the galaxy, it would awaken humanity. The council debated, argued, and postured. Some wanted to tighten restrictions. Others saw a potential ally in humanity's complexity. But all agreed, humanity was watching. They were still out there. In the shadows, listening, learning, and waiting, waiting for the moment when the galaxy could no longer ignore them. Waiting for the day when they would not knock but enter, not as conquerors, not as allies, but as themselves. The scholar knew. They saw it in the eyes of every human they met. The quiet confidence, the weary resilience, the unshakable belief that survival was an art form. That day is not yet here, but it is coming. And when it does, the galaxy will face a truth. It has long feared. Humanity was never the threat. They were the test, and the galaxy, in all its power, may not be ready for the answer.